Hello, welcome to another coffee break with Kardec, our Wednesday's break, where we have a cup of coffee, tea, hot chocolate, or cold drink, and have the opportunity also to talk about the book of Genesis. And today, what I prepared for our coffee break is from chapter 17, about the predictions that we find and that are explained in this chapter, the predictions we find in the gospel. And the chapter starts basically talking about something that Jesus said and experienced himself, that no one is a prophet in his home town. And why he said, there's a passage in Matthew that tells that Jesus, he went to the synagogue in his hometown, and people were really amazed by what he said and the way he said that. He said that with so great an authority. And then they questioned themselves, where his wisdom and the miracles he performed, they came from. And they started to ask themselves, is not he the son of a carpenter? Meaning, someone who was part of the community, someone they knew since early ages. And they said it's not his mother called Mary, and his brothers, James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas. This is the 4 brothers Jesus had, half brothers, because, they were from the first marriage of his father, Joseph. And also, they ask themselves, are not his sisters amongst us? Saying these are people from our community, are people who we live with. And he talks in such a different way. They were so amazed. He talked things in such a depth that, it's strange. He comes from this community. No one here is like that. He's one of us. And that's why Jesus said that the prophet is dishonored in his own hometown. And he said that why? There's an explanation here, a very interesting one in book Genesis. And the explanation is quite reasonable. We experience that. We are human beings. And as human beings, especially we that are on a lower rank within the spiritual development, we are third-class spirits, evolving, of course, as if, looking at the schooling of a person, we are, going from, I wouldn't say infancy, but, primary school. We are in primary school. And what we see in other people and what other people say, we are more biased to see that with the natural material relationship we have with that person, or with the source of that idea, in this case, Jesus. So they say, well, he is, one of us. He's amongst us. We saw him, crawling, and then we saw him walking for the first time. He plays with the other kids here. So he is one of us. And it's difficult for people to understand where this special, I would call gifts. We know they are not gifts as such, something that has been given, but something that has been conquered. How come he is so different from us in that aspect? And then people compare with themselves. They use themselves as a parameter, saying, well, I can't write a couple of nice sentences. And how come he talks in the synagogue like that? So they see that as something that is not possible. That's why Jesus performed so few miracles and was not accepted in his hometown. Unfortunately, this is a characteristic of us. we compare ourselves to people we know well. If we didn't know those people very well, if they came from a different place, then we envelop them in material terms, in the kind of, question mark of a mist, and say, he is special. But when we see people eating what we eat, doing what we do, going through the vicissitudes of a physical life, because we have to remember, whoever comes to a physical life and has a physical body is subject to physical laws. They are part of huge laws. They are part of laws that work within the whole of the creation. But what we experience on a physical level are the expressions of those laws in material terms, in physical terms. And then it's difficult for people to accept someone exactly like him in physical terms, being so different in terms of idea. And then people don't pay attention to their ideas, because as if those ideas were coming from people don't know where within themselves, and say, oh, I wouldn't be able to have those ideas to express myself in that way, so it's not possible for him as well, because he played with us in his infancy, he ate whatever we ate, his house wasn't different from ours, and the human relationship was very similar to anyone. His father is a carpenter. And it's difficult for people to understand this difference, especially when the differences are spiritual differences. So that person is rejected. And that's what we saw. We saw in different occasions his brothers actually. They even wanted to get rid of Jesus, because they said in different words, of course, that he was a disgrace for the family because of his ideas, because of the things he did, and they couldn't understand. So this rejection is more, I would say, natural within those people who live or who know that person in the material context, different from people who are sort of or to whom that person is not known, because then they don't pay that much attention to things they don't know. They say, well, he is a person, but we don't know where he studied or where he learned, what he did, how his family has brought him up. And so it's enveloped in certain areas that are unknown, and that's why the ideas are more accepted than the physical circumstances of the life. And we see many times, how many people actually their work, their ideas are only accepted and praised when after their death, when they are no longer here, because now there is a distance again between that person and the community where that person lived or was brought up. And so this is a natural tendency, because we base our lives much more on material things than on spiritual things. And based on that, Jesus left his hometown and he went to talk to people who accepted better, or who were in better conditions to accept his ideas, what he had to say, not by the physical person he was, but by the ideas, the spiritual being that he was. They could accept that more because there weren't enough information about his physical life to give them more, or to put their attention more on the physical side of that. It's interesting. Sometimes we create this special aura around certain people we see as gifted. Be this person in spiritual terms, or in terms of ideas, a scientist, or a well-known politician, an artist, or whoever. We envelop them in this special aura as if they weren't human beings. And then if we have the opportunity of spending some time with them, we see that they are common people. And then we start actually to diminish the credibility they have, because we see them, they have normal needs, just like anyone else. They have to, sometimes they wake up, and in the same condition that we wake up in the morning. Sometimes they are in a bad mood, the way we are. And if they don't, cover themselves in makeup, they look just normal human beings, So we take, this slowly, we take this aura, and sometimes we even start to see the person in a completely different way. Why is that? If we are here in a physical body, we live just like anyone else. We have the same problems, we have the same processes, and it's natural that we lose this credibility. And that's why Jesus said that with in a so great a degree of wisdom. But then we see that also that there are other inferior sentiments that we have inside. Jealousy, we have envy. Oh, how come? He wants to stand out from his community. He comes from a poor background, who he thinks he is. And we say those things out of a jealousy or out of a envy, and normally criticizing people not by their idea. And then what we have to do, the exercise we have to do, is just concentrate on the ideas, concentrate what the person is saying, not who is saying, but what is being said. And this is interesting, because when we receive a communication from the spirit world, we have to do exactly the opposite to what we do when we hear something from a person. If we know the person, sometimes we may believe, trust, or not. But then when it comes from the spirits, we only concentrate on the idea. We should do that. Why? Because we don't know who that spirit is. If the spirits say that he or she is so and so, we have great difficulties to check that and to make sure that that spirit is saying the truth. So in the end, what do we have to do? Actually, the safest thing we have to do, not just one person, but in a large group, analyze the content of what the person is saying. Because that spirit no longer has the physical body, no longer has this insertion in the community for us to say, oh, I know that, he wakes up in a bad mood every day, so why should I trust him or her? Because, he or she is saying this, or is saying that. It's just like me. I can't conceive that someone who is just like me is saying things that are so different from what most of us think, So that's the barrier, the difficulty that a person finds within the community. And then we also say sometimes, sometimes when we say something, the ones who are very close to us are the ones that are going to actually request a proof from us, saying, well, we say that to people, but I don't remember seeing you doing this or doing that, or because they are there with us. And we have to prove or to give them even more evidence of what we are saying to those who know us than to those who don't know us. And those who don't know us, they may even forget that a person is saying that. But those who know us, as I said before, they're very much attached to what they know about us, our physical life. When we return to spirit, we no longer have this physical reference. We are just a spirit. The result of us as a spirit is what we really are. And in this case, it's easier, I would say, to accept or not what that spirit is saying, or that person in the spirit world is saying. And sometimes also it's very hard for people to understand what someone who is so close to us, who had a very similar environments when growing, to behave in so different way. So this is the explanations that are given for the fact that Jesus said that, And also that is something that is already seen. We even have a proverb that says that, we, in general terms, it depends on each country, but it's something more or less like that. You do things differently in your home than you do in other places. Or, things are different for you in your home, in comparison to other places. So this is interesting, because we sort of analyze something that is common in human behavior. And we should remember that at those days also people were very simple in terms of behavior, in terms of accepting something that was completely different. And Jesus going to a number of people, great number of people, he was in fact offering something to those who were looking for that, and not just those who were simply around him and perhaps weren't prepared, weren't open to accept what he had to say. I'm not saying that everyone in his hometown rejected him, rejected his ideas, and also that he was accepted wherever he went. We know that Pharisees and publicans, they also rejected his ideas. They have a different purpose for that. They have something else that gave them a reason not to accept that, personal interest, or sometimes even the interest to keep the interpretation of Moses' laws and their religious teachings the way they were, and not accepting these new ideas. But it was different, from those who knew Jesus very well in terms of physical existence. That's what I had for today for our coffee break with Kardec. Hope to see you next week for another break with some more teachings from the book Genesis according to Spiritism. See you. Bye-bye.